Hello and welcome to It's All Kicking Off, another football roundtable discussion podcast with myself, Adam Wilbourn, and Gareth Morgan from WhatCulture Football, here to discuss another burning football issue. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Football on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily football podcasts. As I said, though, joined by Gareth Morgan to talk all things Manchester United. They are in action in the Europa League tonight, although we don't really need to talk about that. It'll take quite the collapse for them to not go through. Instead, let's talk about the things they need to do this summer and start, Gareth, with the obvious one. Congratulations on the finishing position in the Premier League. But Jadon Sancho feels like the most important thing in Man United fans' worlds right now.
I'd agree with that. You had me panicking there for a second because you said congratulations, and I thought you were going to follow it up by saying, "Oh, we just signed Jadon Sancho," and I was like, "Oh, it changes everything." I'm so happy. No, he's definitely number one, top of the list right now. It's been well documented. I was literally watching Sky Sports news this morning, and United have just been really open with it, like for the most part, like with sources and everything else, that he is their number one target. But my big fear, I'm just getting whiffs of the typical, David Moyes, Van Gaal era of things where we go in for these big names. There's all this focus, there's all this attention, and it keeps getting prolonged week after week. You look at teams like City getting the business done now. They've just brought in Ferran Torres. I think it is a guy that I tend to sign often on FIFA. And people like Chelsea have sorted everything out. They've got some world-class players, and they're looking like they're going to bring in, what's his name as well, place of Bayer Leverkusen. I can't think what his name is now.
Oh, yes, I know you mean.
Kai Havertz.
Yeah.
Looking like they're bringing him in as well. So I'm getting a few whiffs of that, which any United fan knows. We've been burned a few times in the last couple of years. We've been in for these people like Thiago Alcantara. Again, we linked with him again. He's a player that I would have loved maybe 3 or 4 years ago when he was looking like a young up-and-comer and he was starting to boss midfield. But now it's looking like he's surplus to requirements at Bayern Munich, which I don't want another situation where you bring somebody like Bastian Schweinsteiger in and you bring in players in when they're starting to get rejected by these big clubs. We're Man United, we still need to be drawing in these players that are either coming into the prime or are currently in the prime. So that's something we need to focus on.
Casual fans or just fans of the Premier League, like myself, would adore Jadon Sancho in the Premier League. Interesting that Dortmund have put a sort of timetable on this, saying that they want to sort of start their preparations for next season. So the deal needs to be done, I believe, around the 10th of August, which only gives you a few more days. The rumours I've heard are 100 million. That is the price tag they've put on him. Wages obviously could well be an issue. I know they don't want to get their fingers burned like Sanchez and have to go back and renegotiate contracts with De Gea or Rashford. But do you think they will manage to get their man? Because it's like you say, it's been a case of nearly, or a case of United going, well, we tried, and yet, I don't know, I feel with Solskjaer at the helm, things might be slightly different.
You'd like to think that. I believe I was watching a podcast with Gary Neville a couple of weeks ago, and he made a point about right now with the current state of things, what's going on in the world right now, that not many huge clubs have these big pots, these big funds to draw back on purely because of commercial income and revenue and everything else. The market isn't as competitive as what it normally is. Well, it just normally is year to year. So now is the time where you want to be just flexing your muscles. You're Man United. If you're not telling me Man United do not have 100 million to spend on a player like this. Yeah, he's a premium. It's a premium level, premium price tag because he's a British lad and he's a young rising star. He's had the spotlight on him now. It seems like pretty much ever since he went over to Dortmund, which ridiculously, he was signed for what, 7 million. Dortmund just want to do what Dortmund do. They want to get a nice big profit for a player who would you argue against him being worth that right now? You look at his stats. He's a young lad who's had 20 goals, 20 assists this year. It's frightening. You're looking at players like Rashford who are competing with him in England. He's not drawing anywhere near those numbers. You might argue that he's a slightly different player, plays a little bit differently, not as not as much of a poacher as what Rashford is, but in terms of overall what he brings to a team, his qualities, pay Dortmund, pay him 100 million. He's worth it. I'm scratching my head here. I understand the wage structure thing. You've got players like De Gea on these crazy contracts, Pogba, people like this. But I'm not being funny. If they look around right now in the world of football, they look at what they've done this year, can they honestly, do they have a foot to stand on arguing with that lad getting paid more than them based on how he's been playing over the last couple of years?
We'll get to De Gea and Pogba and Sanchez in due course. I'd say for England, certainly, it would be a sensational sign to have him playing week in, week out with someone like Rashford. It's coming home, of course, next year. It's good news. But if you can't get him, is Jack Grealish an adequate replacement in United fans' eyes?
Adequate's a strong word, isn't it? Very strong word. Myself, and I say this a couple of times when I'm talking these podcasts, myself and my father often have arguments in terms of Man United. And we were watching the United Villa game a couple of weeks ago. And that one really highlighted exactly why I'm not a big fan of Grealish coming to a club like United. I think Graham Souness mentioned that he's the player I think he's drawn the most fouls, obviously. Well, one of the players who's drawn one of the most fouls in the Premier League this year. But if you watch the way he plays, he takes too many touches. He hogs that ball. And it's not the type of player right now with the philosophy that United are building that they need. You look at players like Bruno, and Pogba's had to cut it out of his game big time. If you look at Pogba a couple of years ago, he was the exact same. He'd get the ball, try and do a few step overs, flick it over, look what's going on. And the pace would just be zapped out of the game. Whereas when you've got somebody like Bruno there, he literally picks that ball up and goes, right, have we got somebody on? No, okay, ping it somewhere else. And just, he's constantly trying to up the tempo, or at least dictate the tempo, and not just making it all about him. So Grealish is a talented lad. He's definitely got something about him. He's dragged Villa through this season at times, but he'll quickly get found out at United. If he tried to do something like that and try to be the man, be the focal point of that team, I don't think he's got... If you look at other players in the world right now that can do that can afford to take multiple touches and really command a game, he's not quite at that level. So not a big fan, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I'd make the argument that Grealish needs sort of a sort of staggered upgrade in the Premier League almost. That he's got this Villa side that is basically not necessarily built around him, but relying upon him to make the difference for the most part. Obviously, got other players like McGinn, etc., who can do that sort of thing. But I'd want it almost like a stepping stones thing. If you go from relegation threatened Villa to a side who have some good players, but you won't get lost in the shuffle. An Everton, for example, and God forbid this happened, a Wolves. I mean, they've got so many talented midfielders. Maybe not Wolves, but it's leaping straight into United. Yeah, I worry he'd be out of his depth.
It's the same point everyone's making about Dean Henderson. He's a talented lad. He's had a really high level season for a lad of his age. But to talk about him being drafted into United now as the number one, it's Sheffield United and Manchester United. You need somewhere in between, like you said, an Everton, the Wolves. Tottenham are probably, as much as Tottenham like to think, they're now banging on that top four door consistently. Judging on what we've seen this year, having players like that going to a Tottenham wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. They need to start probably looking at teams lower down and going, right, who can we cherry pick again? Not trying to punch so high and trying to bring in 60 million, 70 million pound players just to make themselves look like a credible threat. Stick to what Tottenham have done in the past.
We've talked in the past about David De Gea. Some shock reports coming out recently linking United with Schmeichel, not the usual one, Kasper Schmeichel, to be brought in. Not necessarily as a stopgap. I think he's a brilliant goalkeeper and certainly wouldn't be treated that way. But yeah, could they replace David De Gea, like you say, in the interim, whilst they allow Henderson maybe another season to develop?
It's a really tough one with De Gea because Schmeichel's a fantastic keeper. I think if they did bring him in, I think the idea would be more for competition than to instantly replace him. Like when they had, I think it was Anders Lindegaard and De Gea when they were both youngsters and they were just vying for a place. And it was really good competitive atmosphere and it brought the best out of De Gea. That probably helped his progression as a player more than anything, more than the putting the weight on and everything else. I think that nice, friendly, competitive atmosphere helped him. But I'm looking at players like Romero still in that squad as well. Romero's Argentina's number one. People forget this. He's been outstanding. Obviously, we're not going to go into too much detail about the Europa League and other competitions like that, but he has been a linchpin for United in those competitions when he has played. And I think he was quite unfortunate not to play in the FA Cup semi-final. I think if he would have been in that game, he deserved it. He played in a lot of the other FA Cup games. But in terms of De Gea, it's just... it's just hilarious how quickly the narrative's switched. You make a couple of mistakes and you go from being this world-class goalkeeper to yesterday's news now, and he's going to get shipped out, and De Gea's terrible. But he had a really bad World Cup. We all remember this. He had a really publicised World Cup, made a lot of mistakes. I think that first game against Portugal, he made a few howlers. And he's not quite recovered his confidence since then. I think his coach that he had at United, his goalkeeping coach that had helped him through all his years at Atletico, left. And that has seriously affected his confidence as well. I think he just needs... I'm not sure. The confidence boost thing, it's easily said. Just say, just give him a pat on the back and he'll be good as new again. You need a bit more focus on De Gea. I think they've taken him for granted to a certain extent because he's been so consistent over so many years. They've just gone, right, keeping's fine. We've got keeping. Let's focus on the defending, the midfield, and the attacking part. I think one of the best signings United can make this summer is bringing somebody in, perhaps to work with De Gea that can get him back up to a level. You talk about bringing in all these top-class players and these midfielders and bringing in a world-class centre-back, people like this, which is definitely something I'm all for. But in terms of working with what we have, you want to be... He's on his day, he's still a world-class goalkeeper. He's a young lad in terms of goalkeeping anyway. He's still probably just about in his prime bubble now, never mind a couple of years ago. So he's not a lost cause. I'm all for bringing in competition. Competition is great. It's how you win leagues. It's how you win multiple titles in a season. You look at the 1999 season with United, we just had depth everywhere. We need that. We can't just rely on De Gea or have Romero playing in all the kind of the lower, let's say, competitions. And then when it comes to the final, throw De Gea in. It shouldn't work that way. Just have multiple players vying for different positions.
We will get into potential other signings in a second, but we need to clarify what's going on with the current squad at the moment. There's always a question mark around Paul Pogba. Alexis Sanchez seems to be more straightforward. I know United are working on shipping him out to Inter Milan permanently. What's going on with those, and what do you want to happen with them and other players in this squad?
I wish Alexis Sanchez all the best, to be fair. I think... It wasn't his fault that he got tangled up in the deal he got tangled up in to a certain extent. Like, he was at Arsenal. He wanted to get out of Arsenal. Somebody went, right, there's loads of money. Come to Manchester United on a swap deal. Cool. No one's going to say no to that. In terms of his actual form and everything else, if you look at his time at United, whenever he went playing internationally, when he went playing for Chile, he was still performing. For whatever reason, when he was at Old Trafford, I don't know if it was, again, the support thing, the people around him, the managers that he had, it just didn't click. He never looked like the same player. Now he's gone straight to Inter Milan, and he's looking like he's rediscovering that form a little bit. So it happens. People like Di Maria came to United, world-class player, outstanding player, one of the best in his positions, just didn't click. Whether it's just living in Manchester, which, it's not for everyone, whether it's things like that, whether it's just... not meshing with the style, the English football. You can't really say the English football thing for Sanchez because of Arsenal, obviously, but I just wish him the best. In terms of Pogba, I'm starting to see a side of Pogba that I really enjoy. I've been a vocal critic of him in the past when he's, like I've said, when he's been like a player like Grealish, where he hogs the ball a bit too much and tries making it a bit all about him. It has happened. But in recent times, definitely post-lockdown, he looks like a team player. And when he is a cog, when he knows his job and he throws his weight around, he's such a powerful force in that midfield and commands the game and just puffs his chest up a little bit, but doesn't make it all about him. Do you know what I mean? There's a difference. There's a difference between commanding and leading your team by example, and just being, I don't know, arrogant and just going, right, I just want to be flashy. Look at these step overs I did and I just lost the ball. Like, there's a big difference between that. And I think he's maturing as a player. I'd like to see him stay at United. I think a lot of these rumours now that were swirling around Pogba just months ago have all died down. I think obviously the current situation has had something to deal with that, obviously, because not many teams have got the money to splash out on a Pogba now, because you are going to be looking around that 100 million mark for a player like him. So I think he seems comfortable. He's got his mates there. I think the arrival of Bruno's helped him no end, because they just look like a force now together. I'd like to see what happens going forward with him. I think he will put together his best season yet next year. There's no real controversy surrounding him. I think his head's clear, and I think we're going to see the best of Pogba. Yeah,
I'm fascinated to see what United do next season. On paper, I think they've got a sensational base for that squad. You talk about the spine of a side, and yeah, let's accept the fact that there are issues with De Gea, but on his day, he's one of the best goalkeepers in the world. Dean Henderson is, of course, potentially there or could be coming back to United. Defensively, you've got Harry Maguire, you've got Wan-Bissaka, you've got Matic really rediscovering some form, Fernandes, Pogba, like you said, and then Rashford, Martial. The list goes on and on and on. So yeah, like as I said, as a base, especially if you can add someone like Sancho to that mix, it's really exciting. Who else do you think they need to sign? I've seen reports about Chilwell, another FIFA legend of mine, Kalidou Koulibaly, is another one being linked to that. Even someone like Raul Jimenez, who had a sensational season at Wolves and is being linked with many, many clubs. Who else do you want to see them sign, or do they need to sign?
I think the Raul Jimenez one is a nice... and this is no knock on Igalo, because I think he's done a job, really. He's done more than what anybody could have expected of him when we brought him into the team. But I think Raul Jimenez will be a nice upgrade in terms of what he brings to a squad. Do you know what I mean? He's a good target man, a real predator in the box, and he just brings something different. If they started with a Martial up front or a Rashford up front, if the game wasn't going for him, you bring him on, it changes the complexion completely. Then there's also a lad from Monaco, and I was just watching a few clips on him earlier today, and I think I don't want to butcher his name. I think it's Buda Shield, I think his name is, from Monaco. I'm just going to check if I've got that right, actually. Badia Shield, sorry. Benoit Badia Shield. And he just looks fantastic. We've been linked to him over the last couple of days, and he's young. He looks super composed, really physical as a player. I think that's something United are missing at the back, because we've got, let's say, a commander there now in Maguire, somebody who can direct traffic, somebody who can really organise that back line. I think we need now an explosive centre-back next to him, somebody who's just going to, whenever they need, let's say, a lot of the times when United get counter-attacked, they get caught out for pace with the two centre-backs. They've not got the quickest centre-backs in the world. You've got somebody like him there, it just covers you a little bit. You look at teams like Liverpool have got Van Dijk there, and Joe Gomez is no slouch. He's obviously plays a full-back in his younger years as well. You've also got with City, Laporte's not a slouch. Like you need that pace and that physicality at the back, especially in centre back positions in the modern game. In terms of midfield, like you said, it's suddenly within a season we've gone from lacking all these options, and suddenly you've got McTominay, Matic is rediscovering himself, Pogba and Bruno look brilliant. Up front, if we bring in Jadon, then you've got wingers galore. You've got Greenwood, who can play as a striker as well. He's looking a player and a half. Like he's looking. I know everyone just jumps on the hype train instantly, but he's looking at £50 million striker already. It's frightening how quickly United have progressed in the ranks. And then you've got the young Brandon Williams at left back. He's completely. He stuck a rocket up Luke Shaw's arse. It's the same again. It's that competition thing. It comes out of nowhere, and suddenly, whoa, on my toes. Okay, I'm gonna have to perform to my best now. You got Wan-Bissaka at right backs looking brilliant. I don't think he's going to get displaced in this team anytime soon, but maybe bring in a right back to cover him. Brandon Williams can play right back, but it'd just be, if you're going to be winning these leagues and Champions Leagues, FA Cups and the rest of it, you look at City when they had that domestic dominance a couple of years back, they had a squad. The bench was routinely, you look at the bench and you'd be like, my goodness, they walk into every other team in this league. It's frightening. So I'm not asking for much. just 5 players. That's fine.
Yeah, I think you're right though, because it's, as much as fans of teams outside the top 6, for example, will roll their eyes at putting world-class players on the bench, it is about depth. This is a long old season, especially with cup games, Champions League games, and you want to do well being back in that competition now. And you just need to look at what happened to City when they lost Laporte. Season collapsed, and if you lose someone like a Maguire, who's such a, like you say, such a presence in that back four, you need other people who can really step up. And maybe it's Koulibaly, maybe it's some of the names you mentioned there. Chilwell, I've seen linked to it, and I love Chilwell, but I also really enjoy Luke Shaw, and like I say, Williams is a perfectly adequate replacement. So I don't see that happening.
My big thing with Chilwell, sorry, really quick. The big thing with Chilwell, the only reason I kind of steer clear from Chilwell in terms of an option for us, it's the asking price.
Yeah,
it's they're looking at what, 80 million for a left back, which he's a brilliant player. But if you're gonna pay 100 million for Jadon, I don't think you're bringing in him as well for 80 million. But we'll see what happens.
Finally, we mentioned you are in the Europa League tonight. Already 5-0 up on aggregate against Austrian side LASK.
That's Lask. We love Lask.
That's sort of a given. It's a weird situation to be in because there was a point in this season where a lot of United fans were going, all right, well, if we don't make the top 4, then we still got the route of the Europa League. Now, obviously, you are guaranteed Champions League football next season. This is a sort of added bonus. You obviously get to start the season later as a result of being in this competition. How do United fans feel about it? You know, it's always a sort of forgotten competition until you get to these latter stages. But you look around, obviously, Wolves still in the competition, Rangers still in the competition. I think Inter Milan are one of the favourites as well, of course. How do United fans feel about this? Do they want to win the competition? Do they just want to, use this as a proving ground for some of their squad players? Or is it just a distraction and you kind of like your players to have a bit of a break before what could be a huge season for you next year?
It's a tough one because I think with most United fans, we're not satisfied with being a club that just you look back in the season and go, oh, getting Champions League football was the success of the season. We're not that club. As soon as we start slipping into that, we're in a dangerous zone, really. So I think most United fans would want a trophy just because it's something to remember the season by. It's something to go, right, we had a successful season, we got Champions League football and we won a trophy. It's something to build on. I think Ollie said it as well recently. A lot of these younger lads who've now come into this squad that perhaps weren't in the team when they last won the Europa League. It's a piece of silverware. It just whets their appetite a little bit and they go, oh, well, I like that feeling. That's good. Let's go again. They won't exactly have the same feeling that those lads have because obviously they're not going to be in a stadium full of people. In terms of starting the season later on, I think that's a big help if they can get to those latter stages. I'm not sure if it's going to make too much of a difference, obviously, because there's still going to be a 30-day, no matter what, with all the teams, they're still going to have a nice 30-day break in terms of resting and everything else. But I don't know. A couple of weeks ago, if we were falling out the Champions League places and it was looking like we're in some serious trouble, I would have gone, yes, we need to win this competition. It's the be-all and end-all. Whereas now, I've just looking through a couple of clips from the Europa League already. That's sort of what we've used this competition for. We've used it to blood youngsters and give some of the old guard a bit of a run out just to keep them fit, just in case we need them. Mattis had a heck of a Europa League. I forgot that. He's scored a couple of goals. He's been quite important to our campaign. Let's call it that. Greenwood's really exciting. I think Greenwood came into his own in that competition. I think being given that responsibility, I think Solskjaer's looking to one side and going, right, if you can make an impact here on this stage, this is technically European football. Do your job here, and you'll fly. And I think that's been pivotal to his development. But I don't know. I'd be quite happy to win it, obviously, because trophy's a trophy. But it's now just it's a bit of a novelty, isn't it? Really.
Knowing our track record on this channel, though, you'll lose 6-0 tonight and be out of the competition. So
and then podcast.
Let us know your thoughts on Man United and the transfers and things that they need to do during the close season in the comment section. And let us know which other teams you'd like us to cover. We'll no doubt be covering several more teams during this weird interim period where there's also still loads of European football going on. And let us know your thoughts and everything, as I said, in the comment section or on Twitter at WhatCultureFC. Watch, they can follow both of us. You can follow Gareth Morgan at
GMorgan04.
You can follow me at Adam Wilbourn. Follow us all at WhatCultureFC, as I said. Make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Football too for daily football podcasts. But this has been It's All Kicking Off. My thanks to Gareth Morgan. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.